Why are so many Black immigrants trying to claim the reparations that foundational Black Americans have fought for? How did history, colonialism, and misinformation create this tension within the diaspora? Today, we hear directly from Black Americans on what's really fueling this push and what's at stake for FBA Lineage and Legacy.
Reparations in this curriculum because it would pretty much dissipate the angerment when it comes to why we need to be sharing reparations amongst Black Americans, Caribbean Americans, because we are a part of a shared piece of history. If you understand the economic trade and where the money lies, the Wall Street market was selling Caribbeans from New York and sending them back to the Caribbean. If we understand that the sugar to rum production was taking the sugar cane from the Caribbeans, shipping it to New York, distilling it into rum, and shipping it back to the Caribbean. If we understand the contributions of Caribbean Americans, there would be no hip hop, there will be no Malcolm X, and there would be no Marcus Garvey. So we are one people, and that means here in New York, we had to consider reparations for the uniqueness of our history. Please include the history as a part of the curriculum so that we as a people can be less angry with ourselves and love ourselves better. Thank you.
Delineation was never supposed to be an affront to Africans and Caribbeans. It was only ever meant to serve as a beacon of disaggregation of information. So, for example, all over Nigeria, the Wolof are not pretending to be the Fulani. The Igbo are not pretending to be the Hausa. The Yoruba are not pretending to be the Igbo. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, they know they're all Niger. They know that they all come from one country, but there are separate groups. And you can tell, who belongs where, whose ancestral lands are wherever. You got even more delineation if you think about Somalia. The Hawiye are not, they don't see themselves as inclined to the northern ancestral land of the Ishaq. You don't see that, right? And people fly, I'm from Seattle, people fly not just Somalia flags, not just Somaliland flags, but even Qabil flags, like tribal flags. That's all we're doing here. You've been doing it for centuries. Black Americans, we're only starting to. Because as far as we were concerned, we're all Black. But we quickly learned a lesson that when we say that, it's our Black that gets left behind. So you got people like, yeah, well, we come to this country and we do better than you. Bet. And that's why we're going to fix this. We're not going to fix you. You do you. This is why we're fixing us. This is why this cultural renaissance is here. You're right. You got here a generation and a half ago, and you get loans and businesses and you do things with your community we have not been allowed to do with ours. Allowed. You think because something is written on paper that it's supposed to, like, there's de jure and there's de facto. There's what the law says and there's how the law is practiced. I remember an apartment building on MLK called Creston Point. When Creston Point opened in Renton, Washington, it was housing displaced people from Hurricane Katrina. In under 2 years, Creston Point became almost completely Somali. Almost completely refugee immigrant, because there's something called acceptable Black. And one thing that the indigenous Black American is not is safe, acceptable Black to our nation. And we have a history of this in our nation. Fighting for rights that other people get to enjoy, so that our governments and the mainstream culture can say, look, we did it, look, there's affirmative action, look, but doesn't benefit us in any way, or only into the margins. So with this delineation thing, it's not about being better than you, it's not about being less African than you, it's about gathering ourselves around ourselves and say, you know what, you might be right. You people who like to pop off at the mouth about Black Americans and how we have no culture and how we have no whatever. Now, I know you're wrong, but let's just say you're right. We're going to clean house. Thank you for the constructive criticism. Now we're going to clean house. And that should not be a threat to you. And if it's been made out by my people to be that way, I would like to apologize. That's not what it's about. It was never about you. It was never, so much of what Black Americans have done has been about everybody. We've never done anything for ourselves. And we're at a place in our human history as a culture to where we're focusing on ourselves. And this is a great thing. It's not a great thing for everybody, but it doesn't have to be. When Jamaicans focus on themselves, it doesn't have to be a great thing for everybody. It's a great thing for them, and that's all that matters. So, likewise.
Other groups don't want us to get reparations because they enjoy looking down on us. The minute we get reparations is the minute that the table stands up. And when the table stands up, everybody stops eating. Everybody compares themselves to our poverty, as in if we're doing too well, then people feel like something's wrong with society. If too many black people move into the neighborhood, then it's called white flight. They get out of there. They feel like if we're not at the bottom, then they're doing something wrong. It's pretty much like that with all races. They don't mind donating to the poor Negroes, reaching down into the gutter and giving us a little money, but they don't want us living next door to them. You feel me? Everything has a hierarchy, and the Lord said either we'll be the head or the tail, and we've been the tail for about 400 years. However, our 400 years is up, so now it's time for us to be the head, and that transition is going to be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. But who gives a shit about how they feel? I don't care about how they feel. We're moving from the tail to the head, and this move is from the Lord, and it's going to be very uncomfortable for the Gentiles.
This comment right here is why we are not letting up when we hear people try to erase Black American culture. I want to read this comment in full. I can remember when Jamaican immigrants in the late 70s/early 80s referred to hip hop as Yankee music, and many Latinos, with the exception of Bronx-based Puerto Ricans, referring to it as jungle music. Only the most Americanized Caribbean people accepted it. Now seeing how some are trying to claim it as their own creation is absolutely insane now. I just want to thank B1 data scientists for that comment. But what these folks who are trying to erase Black American culture and to erase Black Americans from the conversation, what they are really trying to do is erase our history. They're trying to erase our relevance. They're trying to erase our contributions. We are not going for that. We are not allowing it. And so every time you see or hear of someone trying to take something that you know is historically yours, we all have a collective responsibility to make our comments, to make our videos, so that when the young folks are looking, they know, no, Black Americans created hip hop. Do not listen to these folks trying to tell you different. It is in the history books, but they're still trying to alter history. It is our responsibility as Black Americans to stand up for our culture. It doesn't matter if they don't see it, they don't believe it, they're too weird to really get it. That's not our concern. But we are not going to stand on these internet streets and allow people to erase Black American history. We're not going to allow them to do that. We're not going to allow them to erase Black American culture. And to be one data scientist's point about, now they are claiming it is sort of bizarre. I would like to share a hip hop lyric from the quotable Mike Jones. Back then, hoes didn't want me. Now I'm hot. Hoes all on me. And people, that's what it is. There is nothing hotter than a Black American. Come on, y'all.
Caribbean people, yes, unfortunately, some Caribbean people are prejudiced and they do discriminate against Black Americans. It just is what it is. I'm gonna tell y'all a quick story time. I was dating this Caribbean guy. I had no idea that he had another woman. A lot of them are womenizers. I had no idea he was seeing somebody else. I didn't know. We were loosely dating everybody outside, but I entertained. I had friends, but he was the only person that I was like intimate with in the way that we were intimate. I did not know what he had going on. She would call me, harass me, stalk me, and say so many nasty things about Black Americans and tell me my man would never leave me for a Black American woman. You would never be better. You would never measure up to a Caribbean woman. Like just going in because she thought that she was better. I went to school with Caribbeans that would say their school system was better, their islands was better, the air was better, the water was better, everything was better about their culture. Yeah, while being in a school with Black Americans, while their parents migrated over here and they claimed to give them a better life, but they always highbrowed. I had another Jamaican homegirl that I stopped being friends with because she was so obsessed with white people. Like literally, she would say she didn't want dark-skinned kids. Another friend that's Caribbean that says she didn't want her daughters or her kids to be as dark as me. And she was not that much lighter than me. Beautiful woman. And I don't talk to the Jamaican one anymore. But my other friends, like I have Caribbean friends that I absolutely love that, you know, but they have an idea of Black Americans. First of all, they don't like, a lot of them, not all, but some of them don't like being Black. They don't like being dark skinned. They're very colorist. I mean, the bleaching and all of that is very prevalent on a lot of Caribbean islands. Not all. I got to keep saying this because people want to say, not all of us, and blah, blah, blah. There's people on here saying Caribbeans are doing better than the Black Americans. There's Caribbeans saying Black Americans don't have any culture while simultaneously cosplaying us. You're in America wearing Black American drip, using the term drip, using our vernacular, wanting to be a rapper, creating hip hop music, while saying we don't have culture, while you're literally consuming it and embodying it. Now they're saying that Juneteenth is not only exclusive to Black Americans and they could play their soca music in New York City and they could do whatever they want. They could do the pasa pasa if they want to because they own New York now. New York is mainly Caribbean. I'm from New York and I'm a Black American. So absolutely, Caribbeans do discriminate and are prejudiced toward Black Americans. Not all. But absolutely, we're not going to pretend like they don't think that they're better. When we see the types of environments and communities that they come from, we've visited their islands, we know the truth. Yet they come over here and act like they're just so much better when if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be able to migrate here. Anyways, spread love is the Brooklyn way. This is no love lost, but we just cannot, I'm not going to pretend like things aren't what they are. I'm done with the lying. We got to keep it real.
They love trying to claim our culture because they cosplay in it. They hate that none of them influenced us. We don't need y'all to be us, but y'all need us to be y'all. And that is facts. They do need us to be, so they can be somebody. I don't know what it is. This delineation thing showed that what's their culture? What's Caribbean culture? Let's start with Caribbean culture. What's Caribbean culture? Let me name one of their cultures is dancing. We all see how Caribbeans love to dance. You know, we see the Caribbean Day Parade. We see our Jamaican Day Parade, whatever type of parades they do, Trinidadian Parade, all that, right? But the things we don't copy nothing. There's nothing about their culture we copy, right? Case in point, we don't have a culture of people in Black American clubs jumping off top of speakers and landing on women as a form of dancing. Think about that. There's no culture, there's no Black American culture of women jumping off motherfucking light poles and landing on top of people. There's none of that. There's no culture of we dancing on the ground, there's somebody from the outside pour dirty trash can fluid on top of it. You know what I'm saying? We seen those videos when they be dancing and shit. They just be so high to be throwing water on each other. Then somebody get one of them trash cans with the goo and the nasty gunk under there and the garbage juice and the dumpster juice and pour it on you and they still be dancing. We don't do that. Men ain't throwing women on tops of roofs then doing somersaults and landing on them as a dance. That ain't our culture, yo. Why would we copy that? We too smooth for that. We not aggressive like that on the dance floor. That's their culture. Why we want to mimic that shit? Huh? Why? Then African culture. We just don't be out here breaking into zoos, chasing monkeys. Why we want to break into a zoo and chase a monkey and eat the monkey? Why we want to do that? That ain't our culture. Their culture, they will break into a zoo. I'm hearing they eat giraffes now, but I don't know yet. But they are breaking into a zoo and eat the zoo animals. We don't do that. That ain't our culture, man. That ain't none a part of us. We just ain't wearing flip-flops 24/7 out the year. We don't copy that. Even though I will say Africans do probably have the best flip-flop. They got some durable ass flip-flops, y'all. I ain't gonna lie. I been saying this a lot. But them flip-flops do be durable as hell, but that ain't our culture at all. But when we started to delineate, we started to see what is Africans? Like, what do Africans bring to the table? What do Caribbeans bring to the table? What do Mexicans bring to the table? What do they bring to the table? Nothing. That's why when we start delineating and start to gatekeep our cultures, talk, oh no, we did this, y'all ain't had nothing to do with this. They looking naked out here. They look like they never done nothing to me. I don't know what they have done, but we don't gotta mimic them people.
For 5 centuries, the history of black people in the Americas has been shaped by a global system of slavery that stretched from the United States to the Caribbean to Latin America. Over 12 million Africans were taken from West and Central Africa and scattered across the Western Hemisphere. While only about 5% were brought to what is now the United States, the vast majority were transported to the Caribbean, Brazil, and the rest of Latin America. This global scattering created very different black cultures, identities, and political realities. Foundational black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in the United States from the 1600s to 1865 developed a specific and unique identity because their struggle took place largely under a single colonial and national structure. Our culture, ranging from spirituals, blues, jazz, and hip-hop to the civil rights movement, became an open, documented, and transformative force throughout the world. In contrast, the Caribbean was shaped by a mix of British, French, Spanish, and Dutch colonial powers whose plantation systems were brutal and highly militarized. Rebellions were frequent, from Haiti's revolution to uprisings in Jamaica and Trinidad, but the constant changes in colonial rulers also fractured how history was preserved. Many Caribbean nations removed African-centered teachings from their schools long after slavery ended, leaving generations unaware of the influence that Black American abolitionists and activists later had on Caribbean independence struggles. Latin America, especially Brazil, received the largest number of enslaved Africans, yet embraced a different path after slavery. Many Latin countries promoted racial mixing ideologies while simultaneously advancing whitening policies that encourage people to identify with European ancestry and minimize their African roots. Even today, many Afro-Latin people are not taught the full truth about their African lineage or the depth of anti-Blackness within their own countries. This lack of historical education often leads to misunderstandings, distorted self-identity, and even internalized anti-Black attitudes. A major problem throughout the diaspora is that colonial systems deliberately attacked African memory. They banned African languages, punished African religions, rewrote school books, and encouraged Black people to form identities based on European approval rather than African truth. When people do not know their history, they become vulnerable to stereotypes, misinformation, and narratives designed to divide them from one another. This is one of the root causes of the tension, jealousy, competition, and disrespect that some Caribbean, African, and Afro-Latin individuals express toward foundational Black Americans. Part of this tension comes from the enormous global visibility of the FBA struggle. The Black American fight for civil rights, voting rights, desegregation, and equality became a world-defining force. The music, culture, political leadership, and resistance strategies of Black Americans influenced movements in Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America. For some, this worldwide impact generates admiration, but for others, especially those who were not taught the true history, it can spark a sense of competition or even resentment. Complicating matters further, when significant Caribbean and African immigration to the United States began after the 1965 Immigration Act, many immigrants arrived already carrying colonial ideas about Black Americans. Many had been taught that Black Americans were lazy, violent, ungrateful, or culturally inferior, stereotypes created by European colonizers and exported worldwide through media and propaganda. Ironically, these immigrants were entering a country whose hospitality they gained only because FBAs had already endured centuries of suffering and fought for civil rights that opened the doors for all non-white immigrants. Yet this historical truth is rarely taught in the countries people migrate from. White supremacy has always depended on confusion. It praises immigrants as the good Blacks, uses them politically to undermine FBA-specific claims like reparations, and promotes a false narrative that Black Americans have contributed little despite centuries of forced labor and unmatched cultural impact. It is great to see the awakening happening among foundational Black Americans. It is definitely a new day. Tell me what you think about this topic. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, Subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.